Are you getting really frustrated and confused about why you can't overcome your gut condition? Or do you find you get better for a little while and then it just comes back? One factor that people often overlook is the role of the immune system. And I want to go in this video into a bit about how the immune system works in the gut. And you might ask, why do you want to know all of this? Well, it's very much a functional medicine approach. And this is how you look at the root cause of a condition. You look at all the different ways that something like immunity is stopping you from getting better. And then there's lots of really simple ways that you can address that. But it's important to know the factors. So I'm going to romp through those now. My name's Carmela, and I'm a nutritional therapist, and I specialize in gut health. One of the first things to think about is that your digestive system is just like one long hose, and it's actually directly exposed to the outside world. So that's why what they say is between 70 and 80% of the immune system is actually in the gut. And that really starts mainly, well, first of all, in the stomach, where you have stomach acid. And in a way, that's part of your immunity, because the stomach acid, when that's all functioning properly, will kill bacteria, viruses, any pathogens, parasites, all those kind of things that enter your digestive system. So if you're taking like certain medications, as you get older, if you're quite stressed, then that can be quite weak. And it's an area to address. That's one area to address. And then if you get a bacterial infection like Helicobacter pylori, which is the bacteria that cause ulcers, that bacteria, they actually will reduce the stomach acid themselves in order to create a friendlier environment for them to reside in your gut. So it's an interesting fact that bacteria is quite naughty. Sounds like a terrible word, but it's not good, because it really creates a kind of vicious circle. And then really one of the main immune factors, which is something that I always look at in my clinic, is an antibody. It's called SIgA, and it's one of the most important antibodies in the gut. And it does some fantastic things. It's got lots of functions. You can measure it in stool tests, and I do that quite often. And sometimes that really can be quite low, and that's quite often something that would perpetuate a gut issue you might have. So what does SIgA do? Very briefly, one of the things it does is that it prevents pathogens like bacteria, viruses, things you don't want from taking hold in the gut. And also, it will actually prevent overgrowth. So if you've got something like SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, that's just normal bacteria, but it's been left to proliferate and overgrow in the small intestine. If you've got good levels of SIgA, that's a lot less likely to happen. And the same with Candida, which comes from a normal yeast, which has got out of control. And the other great thing about SIgA is that it has anti-inflammatory properties. And that's a really important factor with inflammatory bowel diseases, which are Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Because those are, as the name suggests, all about inflammation. So you need good levels of SIgA to prevent that from happening, and to manage IBD if you happen to have it, and reduce the frequency of flare-ups. So that brings me on to the whole issue of inflammation, which is a big factor for lots of gut disorders. So in terms of IBDs, those are called immune-mediated diseases. So they're slightly different to autoimmunity. And it's when your immune system has really gone a bit crazy and panicky, and it's trying to attack bacteria in your gut that it perceives to be a danger. But it becomes, it starts to attack your gut lining. So your gut lining is really just collateral damage. It's the bacteria that your immune system's aiming at. So it's not autoimmune, because it's not actually directly attacking your gut lining, but it just happens to be a sad side effect. So then that brings me on to autoimmune diseases. So the most significant one being celiac disease. And that's where your immune system, again, gets like out of control and overly panicky, basically. And it starts to attack an enzyme in your body that binds to gluten. And then again, your gut lining, it also gets damaged in the process. Then you have conditions like Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune, and that's a disease that slows down thyroid function and therefore slows down all metabolic processes in the body. And if you've got something like that, you're way more likely to have something like SIBO, because it just makes everything sluggish and it slows down motility and creates the sort of environment for bacteria to stagnate and overgrow, which is what happens in SIBO. And then the other issue in terms of autoimmunity and why it's so important to consider with gut health conditions is that typically with something like SIBO, people will come to me and they'll say like, oh, I got like food poisoning when I was on holiday or something, and then I've never felt right since. And that's like a classic sort of lead up to something like SIBO. And what happens there is that the bacteria that cause the food poisoning release a lot of toxins, and your body reacts to the toxins. And this is a process called molecular mimicry, where your immune system is trying to attack the toxin, but then it mistakes a protein in your body and attacks that instead of the toxin. And that specific protein is called vinculin. And that's what helps to keep your gut lining healthy and regulates gut permeability, which is what you need for nutrients to pass through your gut lining into the bloodstream. There's actual tests that measure that antibody that's attacking the vinculin, but unfortunately they're not available in Australia at the moment. Hopefully they will be soon. And so those are really the main issues. And as I say, like you might be wondering, oh, why do I need to know all this? Well, you definitely need to know these factors, because once you've identified these as like triggers and drivers, then there's actually really easy ways to tackle them so that you can overcome your gut disorders, or you can also just manage the symptoms, reduce number of flare-ups with conditions like autoimmune conditions and IBD. So in my next video, I'm going to go practical, and I will be discussing with you all the steps you can take to improve your immunity, to rebalance it. And as I say, like most of those are really very easy and straightforward, but definitely something you have to address if you are working to recover from a gut disorder. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.